Got it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anthony, and I'm production manager at Custom Collaborative. And today we're so happy to have you join Masterclass Friday with Lauren Damio. I would love to introduce Lauren before I turn it over. So Lauren is a tailor manager and creative director of Atelier Damio, which inspires BIPOC women and youth to create a technical skill and craft in fashion alterations. Sewing was inherited from her grandmother, who made beautiful gowns and costumes for the community in New Orleans. From her teenage years to adulthood, she has worked for brands such as Jimmy Choo, Chanel, and Lafayette 148 in design, operations, and tailoring. Lauren wants to honor her heaven-sent talent and be of service to others in this global industry of fashion. And so today we are going to focus on Lauren's expertise working on simple hems, waist, and body alterations. I love tailoring and alterations, and so I'm really excited to learn as well from you, Lauren, and welcome to today's masterclass. Thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to all of you makers and fellow sewers. And thank you to Custom Collaborative for the opportunity to speak again. Very much excited to talk about pants alterations. We can go on for days about it, but I want to keep it very basic with hitting a few points, but also I'm very open to conversations and questions along the way. So do not hesitate to write in the chat, and Doris or Anthony, if you see a question that may be related to the current task that I'm working on, feel free to interject so that we can have a conversation about some of these things. So thank you so much. This is my mannequin, and today really pants alterations are a common problem for women, right? You know, you can wear a dress, you can wear a skirt, but sometimes ladies are having issues with the fit of their pant. It's because maybe they are heavier on the bottom and have a tinier waist. So what I really want to show to you today, how to really fit yourself and, you know, fit others. So what I like to call start from the top. Even if you're starting with a jacket or starting with a pant, you always start from the top. So in this situation, the top is going to be your waist. Whenever you buy a pair of pants, whether they're stretch or they're denim or a wool pant, where do you like that pant to hit? So give me 1 second while I just adjust a little bit so that you can see more, okay? So the natural waist is really across where your belly button is. A high waist is going to be above, and then a low waist is going to be closer to your hip. So those are the first few things that you have to ask yourself when you are fitting a pant or trying on a pant. Just because a pant fits loosely at the waist, but it fits perfectly at your heaviest part, which is your hip, doesn't mean that pant isn't for you. You still have the opportunity to fit it, and that is, again, starting from the top. So what I like to say is, where does the waist sit? And that's the first question that I ask a client. So I'm going to loosely pin this so you can see the gathering. And this is my center front line, right? So we're just going to pretend this is when it fits correctly. But a center front line, when it's slightly adjusted and needs more fitting or pinning, it may look like this, right? So this can either be, again, your high waist or your natural waist or a little below, but I'm going to fit for the natural waist. And you start from the top and you pin, preferably over the seam that you're going to take in. Now for a pair of denim, there isn't a center back seam, but with denim, and again, I know this is the front of the model, but I just want to show you when pinning, you pin from the part that you need to take the most. Yes, thank you, preferably over the seam, correct, thanks Anthony. And zero it out to where it's the fullest part, okay? So if I turn the mannequin to the side, you'll see that this area that I pinned, once I sew it, it will now be fleshed with the garment. I mean, on the garment and on the body, okay? So once you have the waist pinned, you might notice the rise, right? different people stand different ways. Some people stand protruded and some people stand inverted. So first you focus on the top of the waist and then where you need the most for the rise, okay? So sometimes when you see the gap in the back of the pant, and again, imagine this is the back. When you see the gap of the pant, that means probably they're protruding forward, their hips are shifting forward or down in a tilt. And that way, you know, to reconcile that, it's almost like zipping it up. And you're going to pin this area here. And I'm going to show you an example on a flat pair of pants really quick of how I mark waist. So this is a men's pair of pants, right? This is the back. This is the area, oh, sorry, I'm a little reversed here. This is the area in the amount that I need to take in. And you see it, I did a nice little basting stitch. Even though I didn't do it directly over the seam, I wanted to show you guys exactly how much I'll translate into the actual center seam, center back seam. So you see here, the center back seam, I will take in that amount, which is total 1 inch, right? So that means once you open up the garment, you're going to take an evenly 1/2 inch on both sides down to 0. Okay. Any questions thus far on like the waist and any problem areas that they're having with fit? Please feel free to interject, and I'll just check on the chat every few minutes. Quick advice, start at the top. Thank you. So once you start with the waist and you adjust, you notice the rise is affected. Now the rise starts from the back seam, the top of the waist, goes through the crotch, excuse me, sorry, let me make sure the camera's going. So this is the back, you see the J, that's how we know it's the back, because the back is usually curved in the J, through to the front of the body of the fabric, of the garment, excuse me, right? So it's almost like a U. So the rise, again, is something that some ladies have a shorter rise and some ladies have a longer rise. So again, when you're buying pants, the waist is something you can really fix, but the rise is something that you can't give or get. So I would say for low rise pants, right? The rise is going to be a little shorter, right? Because you're going to wear it closer to the hip. A high rise is going to have a longer length of inches in terms of rise because you want it to sit higher on the waist. So those are some common things that I see with women when I see a fit on the pant from the top. Now, one second. As you move from the top is a tinier part, hopefully you all want a tinier waist, then you have the wider part, which is the hips. Now, what I look for at the hips is there any pulling? And I'll adjust this here. And actually, I'll turn it around. And pulling at the hips or the seat means you might need a little bit more width in terms of the side body. And depending on the garment, you don't know how much seam allowance you have in that side body. So what makes it easier to tell is when you have a garment that you like and you're in the store, flip it inside out and just see along the seam allowance how much you have. And if it's enough to contribute to the ease that you need in the hip, then you can account for that. But it's always better to have a larger size and then cut it down in the event that you don't have enough seam allowance on the side. So I'm going to pull this hip a little tighter. And the first thing I notice when the hips are pulling, you'll see a wrinkle. Whenever you see a wrinkle, that to me gives me the sense that there's something that is tense and needs to be released. So for example, if it's tight across the hip, the wrinkle will be horizontal, right? Because then it'll be pulling on either side. So to alleviate that, again, you'll have to take a look into the hip and the seat to see how much you have to release. So this is another pair of client pants. And what I'm going to do is show you inside out how much is available. And there is no industry standard. It depends on the designer. Some designers leave a little bit and some designers leave a lot. But what I've been seeing lately, not too much. So in the seat, you're going to get, see if you can see this. Let's say my hips are really tight and I need about an inch. In the seat, excuse this tape, I have about 2 inches, okay? Now, we're not going to let out max 2 inches because you have to leave at least 1/4 to maybe 3/8 in terms of the seam allowance because you don't want to bust that area. It's such a high, not trafficked area, but a very stressed area because you're sitting and moving up and down. So we have 2 inches that are in the seat, meaning I have about 1.5 inches available, which is good, matter of factly. Let's say I didn't have that much in the seat because it might be a seam that's finished with a French seam, meaning there's only 1/8 in terms of that seam allowance. There's nothing for me to release. Even if I can check on the sides usually have about 1/2 inch. So really you can only release in this particular garment for this brand about 1/4 here on each side. So that's 1/2 inch, 1.5 inches in the middle, so 2 inches. So each size, when you jump per size, it's about a 2-inch range difference. Oh, the pants are Margiela. Too tight. I hear you, Nicole. I have that issue too. So back to, do I need room in the seat? And what I really do is look from the hips to the knees, because that's where you have to adjust, excuse me. The hips down to the knees, that's where you have to adjust because of the most mobility, right? Your legs bend at the knee. So your hip to your knee is really an area that you can play with and really have it adjusted to your pelvic area and your thighs and everything else. So it's very important to check with the seat. Now, when we move further down, I'm going to show you a little trick that I do in terms of making a leg look slimmer, especially if the client doesn't have a seat in the back. And it's called pegging. So pegging means the difference between pegging and tapering. Pegging is when you only take in the back panel, right? Let's see. So pegging, this is the back here, and this is my front. Pegging is only taking in the back panel only, right? So sometimes you'll find that if someone doesn't have a bottom, or if you had to purchase something a couple of sizes bigger to accommodate your hips, but then it's baggy down here, you're going to start pegging the back leg. Very different way to describe it, thanks. So pegging the back leg is, again, strictly only taking from the back of the leg. So for example, on this pant, I don't know if you can see it, this is the front, this is the back. I've marked in yellow how much I'm taking in. And pegging can stop right at the knee, or sometimes it goes all the way down through the hem. But pegging is something that I think is a trick that most people think, oh, if I need to take something in, I'm going to take it from both sides. Not necessarily, because you might have a fuller thigh. Again, our thighs have muscles and they might protrude out. So I don't want to make it tighter in the front. I need it to be tighter in the back. So pegging is a term for the back panel only. Now, tapering, or excuse me, crotch in. So now once you've pegged here, crotch in. I know some people hate hearing that word. I've heard it before. The crotch, again, has something to do with your rise. Okay, and again, with the crotch in, similar to pegging, you're only going to take in the back panel, right? So let me show you here. So you're going to take in the back panel with the crotch, but only in the inseam, not the outseam like pegging the back leg. So crotch in again is for someone who has no seat or it's very loose. You'll find like a little bunching in that bottom area and it's very loose and the client just starts pulling, what is this back here? So you're going to take the crotch in. And the crotch in generally, you can do about an inch max, okay? So again, when we start jumping beyond an inch and a half, that's when we're playing with sizes. And also you don't want to change the grain line. So from the crotch in, you generally stop right above the knee. So I did about an inch and I marked it, see, right to stop here. Any questions already? No. All right, getting the crotch seems scary. Crotch fit is important. Yes, it is very important. People don't want to look like they have a diaper, you know, behind. And it's so important for a real friend to tell you how you look from behind. I have a coworker who has no problem telling me how I look, and I really appreciate that. So now for tapering, I'm going to show you tapering, but I'm going to show you tapering from the knee through the hem. Now tapering is when you take both sides, and tapering can be on the outseam and the inseam, okay? So something like this with tapering, you start from the knee. Let's say you have a pair of pants that you want to make slimmer. So you're gonna start from the, obviously it fits very nice in the thigh, you're going to mark from 0 and then taper in through the hem. So some men, in my experience with men's tailoring, men get very particular about how wide they want their finished cuff to be, or finished hem. Some men like it to be 7.5, some like it to be 6. Women don't have to get so technical because we can play with different widths, and men too, obviously. But you know, for traditional suiting, I remember being an apprentice, they would say, okay, taper leg and make hem 7 inches. So we really know the hem isn't going to be 7 inches wide. It's really going to be 14, but 7 when it's pressed and it's flat. Yeah. Any questions? I know it's a lot of visual, but I want to make sure that I'm visually answering your questions as much as possible and as I can with this particular class. Okay. Now the next topic, once you've decided how the hip is going to be, your waist, and your taper, it's really all about the stylish part, right? The hem styles. What is your preference? And that's something that I always talk to people about. Some people like things cropped all the time because they want to show their shoes. And some people, like men, may say, I want no break, which means they don't want to bend in the front of the hem. So that is something that, again, I always tell the client, this is a style preference. I leave about 2.5 inches in the seam allowance. So that way, if people want to change, as styles change, they can also adjust the length and, you know, fluctuate. If someone grows, I mean, then maybe they get taller, then we can make it a little longer. Or if they shrink, then we still obviously can make it shorter. So this is a men's pant with a cuff, okay? Now, when I pinned the cuff on the client, the reason why I pinned it this way is because the client wanted to keep the cuff and I wanted to measure the distance of how much I needed to shorten. And I believe this one is 2 inches. So I really want to, crop looks are cute too, for sure. I really wanted to show you guys that it's not really hard to add a cuff. What a cuff really looks like, depending on how wide you want it in terms of the width of the cuff. It's all about fashion and whatnot, but the standard, I would say, is about 1.5 inches to make something clean. So a cuff that's about 1.5 inches. So I'm going to shorten 2 inches and still keep the cuff. So the trick is, you take this, and I'm going to show you the best way I can visually, right? You take this, and I released it and pressed it. Okay. And I'm just going to briefly pin it for you. And I know that in order to create the cuff, I have to turn it under 3 inches. So measuring like so. 3 inches. Sorry, I'm in the, let me try to do this, bring this closer here so you can see. And again, doing a cuff is really easy. So you can play around with some of your pants, but you can turn it under 3 inches, right? And now it is a plain bottom. Okay. Now the finished cuff is 1.5 inches. Let me try to show you the best way here. The finished cuff is going to be 1.5 inches. Okay. So I'm going to turn it up 1.5 inches. And that's it. So once you've turned it under again, or flipped it out, so to speak, because you're almost reversing it, the trick is and this is fairly, again, simple. Once you don't have to do more than just to stitch in the ditch right at each side seam. And that's all that this designer did to keep this cuff up, is to stitch right here. So again, it's open here. Just stitch right in the ditch there. Oh, so I'm looking at some quick questions on charging. How do you decide to charge? Wow. You win some, you lose some. But honestly, for a plain bottom, I charge $25 because I know all it requires for me is to cut and to do quick hand sewing. Now, for more complicated bottoms like a cuff, which takes maybe 10 more minutes and a little bit more of measuring, I may charge $30 to $35. Now, another good question is denim, which I know a lot of you, are playing with, especially everyone's at home. There's a lot of denim that's not fitting. For denim, there's the traditional top stitch, and this is how much the client wants it shortened. But this is just a top stitch, right? All I have to do is just turn it under, measure my seam allowance, and then I sew, and I charge around $35. However, if someone wants the fashion finish, I'll show you an example, a fashionable finish, then I would charge close to $40 or $45 because it's something that is going to take a little time. So this might not be the best example, but I'll show you. Let's say the client really wants to keep this exact distressed hemline. She doesn't want me to recreate it. She loves it so much. She doesn't care if it's a seam that's visible. What I would do is have to detach this and then find a way to reattach it and account for how much it needs to be shortened. So So something like this could be upwards to $50 for reattaching original hem. So an original hem or fashion hem, those are when the client really wants what is there. They don't want you to just turn it under and do your own hem. Any questions? Let me check. This was a question I was afraid. Oh, okay, good. So worth it. Original hem wants it how it already is. So again, yes, top stitch is just turning it under, and then original reattaching. Original means I have to measure, cut off the original, and then account for enough space to reattach. I wish I had an example of a reattachment to original hem. Now, I was gonna say this went by pretty quick, but with pants, in old denim, this is what I traditionally have started to do. And I know this is probably very home crafty looking, but what I do with a lot of my denim from my clients, I honestly start creating yardage, you know, patchwork. So what I think is really cool about all of this is that you get to see how different denim is from brand to brand. Like when you think in your mind, okay, denim is 100% cotton. Well, this one is 100% cotton, but this one has stretch, but yet it's really fun to play with, you know, the different top stitches and stitch widths and weights of this. So let me see. Oh, thanks, Erica. Cuffs are very stylish. I like a good cuff. Crotch fish is important. Anything thus far on what I've talked about? And anyone can unmute themselves. Is that okay? And if anyone wants to unmute themselves, you can unmute yourselves. If not, I'll keep going because these are just pants. So back to pants and really trying to find the right pant is probably the biggest story for everybody. You know, again, your weight changes, the waist, the way it hits, it affects everyone differently. But again, you have to start from the top. And again, remember your widest points. So sometimes people get intimidated by the number or the size number. Some people are rather be a 2 than a 4. And for me, that doesn't really matter because as long as it fits well, then it's meant for you, it's tailored for you, and it will look great on you. And I find it very interesting because I do work with women of all sizes, and you'll be surprised who's a size 2 but looks a little bit, not heavier, but more abundant than someone who looks like they're super curvy, but they really are a size 0. I've seen it all before, and that's because all of our bodies are very different, and our muscle forms are a little different too, and how it hits on the muscle. So I see a couple of messages at the bottom, and don't be shy. How many pairs of old jeans? Wow, good question, Beverly. I'm not gonna lie, it's probably, I have a whole box full in terms of scraps of what I've cut off, about 2 inches to 3 inches on hems, probably over 100 plus pairs of pants. And you know, I did make a bag with my friend one time with all the denim that was used, but definitely you can even take the hem of wool pants. I've seen people make quilts, you know, out of it, you know, just keep the scraps for a lot of different things. Or you know, someone like myself, I tend to hold on to a lot of stuff, especially fabric. So I find different ways. If I really like this fabric, I'm going to put it on a pillow. So for example, this denim patch, you know, I mean, that's the trend right now. Marc Jacobs did something like this. I forgot who else, but during the pandemic, this was just really, oh, good question. I'll answer that in a second, Anthony. But, you know, again, I would do like a pillow with this, or reupholster a chair or something like that because of the amount of yardage that I have. Now for a machine, for dealing with denim, I would recommend a heavy duty machine. It doesn't have to be an industrial machine, but the machine that I work with for my denim is a Singer, and it's heavy duty. I purchased it refurbished from wawak.com. Wawak is WAWAK, and I've been using them for years, not only in the tailor shops, but for myself personally, because they often provide a fairly discounted sewing notions. And if you do not live in the New York area, they also ship. So I think, what was really hard for me starting out as a tailor, I wasn't here in New York with all the garment districts. I wasn't able to, go to all the fabric stores. So I really kind of leaned in on Wawak to help, and Joann's Fabrics, because I did live in Ohio for a bit, and I was at Joann's probably every 2 or 3 days with my 20% off coupon, trying to buy everything that I needed to buy. But yes, so that is to answer the question about the denim machine. So you really need just a heavy duty machine and also a really thick needle for denim. So denim needles are generally size 16 to 18. You're not going to use the same denim needle that you're going to use on your silk blouse, or even your lightweight cotton jacket, so to speak. Great. So, oh, sorry, I scared myself. So again, what I was hearing again for ladies, we always feel like we can't wear pants and we always have to do the stretch. And I get it, that's a look. But sometimes you don't want to always be in something that's tight fitting. You want to be able to express yourself in other bodily parts, right? So for example, again, with a straight pair of pants, you can go to a store, keep an open mind. If it fits your hip, you like the fabric, you like how it looks, and you see the potential, don't be afraid to turn it inside out and see what options and opportunities that you have with that. Okay, so use different thread for denim. Awesome question. So back to denim, there is a top stitch thread, which is heavier. And that is thread weights start from like 100, which is like your finest. And then you get into your lower numbers, which gets to your thickness. And this is where you have to really kind of practice on your machine and get to know your machine, because sometimes when I'm doing a top stitch, I can only put the heavy thread in my needle and not my bobbin. Or depending on my other machine that I have, I put the heavier top stitch thread in the bobbin and the lighter thread in the needle. And again, every machine has its mechanisms, but you just really have to get to know your machine and do not give up on it. And it is frustrating to calibrate from size to size, from fabric weight to fabric weight, but it does help when you take the time to take a scrap piece of fabric and practice and test on it. Now, with top stitching, it's not really limited to denim. Top stitching obviously is, like you said, a detail on the trim of the hem. So this could be considered top stitching, right? So this wouldn't require a heavier weight thread. It would just require the visibility of a stitch on the face of a garment. Let's see what else. Okay, we're doing good. So again, I really wanted to cover, a few basics on how to get the right fit of the pant and things that you can do at home. But I'm looking forward to, feedback on what specific areas or tasks that you want to learn in the future with pants. So again, that could be how to make something go from, and this is, I'm just throwing it out there, a straight pant to a fit and flare. Now, when you're going from something that you have less fabric to something with more fabric, that is really when you have to release any inhibitions, open the garment, have time, have space, and add the fabric yourself. So you won't really have an original look when you go from limited fabric to, let's say, unlimited amount of fabric. However, let's say I really like this look from, I was gonna say Margiela right now is doing the skater pant right now. So remember, everyone was doing the skinny leg. Now we're back to these huge Jinko jeans look, but you really like this pant so much and you want it to fit tighter at the waist, you still buy for the width that you want and then take in and taper on the body. It will take a lot of love and care, but that is something you can do. However, I can't go and purchase a skinny leather legging and say, okay, now let me flip this, and the trend is to have a bootleg cut. I can't really do that without adding fabric that is not the same as the original. Yeah, okay, great. Any questions? Anyone want to unmute themselves? I'm open to that. Just have a conversation.
I had posted a question saying basically you can do things like if you wanted to step out the circle and do a hectagon or a triangle or a star, you can basically do any type of shape design.
Right. I see you, Beverly. You say you can do circles, hexagons, triangles, and stars. You totally can. Let's see. Again, it's just really finding that initial fit that works for you up in this area. That's honestly what the biggest, once you feel comfortable here, then the way and the width of the leg is truly up for fashion. It's really about how does it fit around these troubled areas and these areas where you're trying not to look a little sloppy. Also, another thing with rise that I didn't mention before, let's say the rise is too long. Let's say it's too long in the front. You're going to pin in the body so that you can shorten the rise in the front. So again, you can't really give more to the rise, which I mean, it's lowering the waistband, or so to speak, but it's easier to take from the rise. So something like this, right? So you would just only pull from the body, and basically you would detach the waist and then push up that excess and cut. And then that's how you adjust the rise there. In rise, again, testing out the rise, you sit down, right? Once you pin it, you sit down. How does it feel when you sit down? Is it cutting you there? Or as people are saying, is it giving camel toe? If it's giving camel toe, then you need a little bit more in the front for that rise. Oh, Denise, sorry. Denise, what is your question?
Hi, how much would you charge to taper some jeans?
Good question, right? Because jeans, depending on where I am tapering them.
Like if it was for, like if he gave you some straight leggings and like some boot cuts and he wanted to have them tapered.
Mm-hmm. It depends. This isn't a good pair of jeans to show you, hold on. Because there's two types of stitches in the jean. If you notice the out seam, depending on the brand, in this brand in particular, they did the flat felt seam on both the out seam and the inseam. So for something like this, I would charge around 50 because you have to open this all up. And this is about 1, 2, 3 stitches. And that's just on one seam, right? So you would have to open this all up and cut it and adjust it and then reattach it. But some denim, if you look at your denim, you might have on denim now, generally the out seam is clean, meaning it's just like a simple taper. So then I would say 40. But then for something like this with the flat felt, I would charge 50, 55, because it's gonna take at least an hour of your time to open this all up, cut it, and then reattach it. It's 3 stitches. Is there a trick to opening up denim double? see if I can find one. There is a trick, but it depends on if there's a chain stitch or not, okay? So for this one, there is a chain stitch, right? And generally the chain stitch, and this is, you find that chain stitch, you really find it in denim only. Sometimes I have to play with where I start to pull it, because once you do, you can pull it down. Actually, I'll do it. So, just open here. So let's see, it's here. So once you pull here, you kind of have to finagle where. And this one's a little stubborn. But if I had selected the right thread, I can pull it all the way down. Let me try this one. Let me know if you can see my hands. See, this one came out easier, right? It's a chain stitch. So that is a trick for denim when you have a chain stitch. Some designers don't have a chain stitch, so you really are sitting there and you're picking in and out. And that takes forever. Is a chain stitch typically a thicker stitch? A chain stitch is something done by a machine, right? And the way it is done, you have your top stitch on the outside, and then your rhythm, I guess is how I'm gonna say it, rhythm of stitches in the back, which is kind of extra thread here, right? So it's really the same weight as a top stitch thread, but it's just the specialty machine that is used that allows this stitch to happen. I don't have that machine. So again, for someone like me, when I'm pricing something like this, I have to account for the time that it takes for me to open it up and then to match the original top stitch, because top stitch, you see it, and sometimes if you miss a hole in the top stitch, your mistakes show. But that's a good question for sure. What else do I have in terms of that? Oh, what I also wanted to show about denim, right? Denim doesn't have a center back seam. So a trick, what I do is for ladies, for your denim jeans, don't be afraid to remove the belt loops, okay? And whenever you remove the belt loops, remove it from the inside. That way you won't distress anything on the outside, okay? Now, once you remove it here, and actually I'll do it because look how much I need to take in this waist. And there isn't a seam here. So I know I'm going to have to create a seam here. And what I do is I remove the belt loop, mark where it is, close it up, and there's going to be a seam here, but it'll be reattach the belt loop so that way you won't see it. So belt loops aren't as easy to take off because they are kind of done with the machine that locks everything. So if I do work with the front of the fabric, I usually try to go towards the back of the fabric, right? I'm not gonna pull from here, which is the facing. I'm gonna pull from the back because I know I'm gonna cut this area. See how fast my hands can work here. Feel free to shout out any questions while I'm doing that. But generally, you can make this almost look as clean as the original just by adjusting the waist.
Lauren, I have a quick question. Do you feel
Sure.
like more and more people are turning to alterations of their existing garments just because they're realizing that there's so much waste in the world, etc.? Or how do you feel like trends are pushing towards alterations and more regenerative fashion?
That's a good question, Anthony. I think there's two motivations, right? Some people really could care less about the environment and will, spend money and continue to spend money on fashion. But some people who do have money and do care also want to find ways to be unique, one. So that is taking favorite pieces that they might have and reinventing them. And then also some companies are taking the initiative to be more sustainable. For example, Lafayette 148 with the scrap fabrics and partnering with Custom Collaborative during the pandemic, reusing a lot of these old fabrics. However, alterations, what I'm finding is, again, they allow someone to feel unique, something that they really love and they can't let go of. It gives them the opportunity to rebirth and have get to love this garment again, or simply, just slim pickings. Like some people are really conservative in terms of not wanting to spend too much. If the jean looks really good and there's no holes in it and it just needs a tweak here or there, why not have alterations? But I do feel like people are looking more to alterations because they're realizing these are things that they can adjust at home on their own instead of going to a store and just being sold something and having to take it, off the rack. Now they can say, do you have a tailor in-house? Something to make that garment a little more special. And I think that's what tailoring really does. It makes that garment more special. Not only do I connect with, my clients in this, but the fact that they feel good about themselves afterwards and they look good, I think that is why alterations is really, really important with overall encouragement and body confidence and body positivity. But that's a good question. And I think, again, at-home sewers, I've actually, funny story, one of my friends, he's a stylist, and he kind of knows how to sew and he kind of doesn't. And I gifted him one of my machines because, he's like, I really want to start getting back into the practicality of it. He has such a keen sense of style. He knows how things should fit, how they should look. And it becomes where people have talents in other areas, they realize, hey, this skill could really help supplement, the current talents that I have, or, even amplify it even more. So I'm actually trying to help him via FaceTime and Zoom, try to teach him how to thread the machine again and how to do certain things, which is, always tricky, but, I hope to be able to, do something in person one day so people can really lean over and see what I'm doing. A lot of thrifting. Yeah, Ashley, there is, especially with thrifted clothing, they're so beautiful and they're so precious. And I have to say, every coat that I wear, I usually brag because I've thrifted it from a place in San Francisco. Like, it's never the new stuff that I buy. It's never the new stuff. It's always something that is from the past, that's unique, that looks sustainable because it's lasted 20 something years. And you just have to replace the lining or something. So I've had very expensive jackets that no one can really care less, and the cheapest, thriftiest jacket, and people are like, where did you get that? And it's usually because of the style of fabrics at the time, the quality, and it's just, again, different. It's not like going to Uniqlo and picking it off, even though I love Uniqlo, but it's not, you become your own person, your own tailored made person. Let's see what else. Oh, that's exciting. You guys are deconstructing denim jackets and reapplying knit textiles. That is cool. How are you doing that? Are you doing the knits on the pockets or what's going on?
Well, it was a really great project that came into Fashion That Works production. There was this designer that really is interested in not creating more waste. And so she buys thrifted denim jackets, and then she travels to Guatemala to purchase knit textiles that are in surplus there, handmade by artisans. So she wanted to connect the two, and it took some trials, but Fashion the Works production really did great work, taking apart, deconstructing, taking the sleeves off, and then using the sleeves as a pattern to then place and cut over the textiles and then reattaching them to the denim. So it's really
Amazing.
cool
That
result.
sounds amazing and original for sure. And it's like almost full circle because, you know, going to Guatemala and, you know, supporting local artisans there who again appreciate all the handwork, and then, you know, merging it with the current, you know, denim textiles that you might have. Because there is a lot of waste in the industry, and you know, we don't always realize that, but the beauty of this day and age is that we have the knowledge now and we can be owners of what we buy and choose to spend our money on. And no one's perfect and no one's here to judge either. So, you know, I think again, clothing is just made for expression and who you are. It shouldn't really be a classist thing or something to use against someone in the future. So I think we have about 30 minutes left, but I do, you know, again, don't feel afraid or shy to ask me to revisit something or how to pin something. But yeah, pants are, you know, you can go to many extremes with the history of pants. And I find that elastic waistband pants are cool. And they're cool for your lazy days or your fuller days that you're feeling fuller. But there's nothing like a real pant fitting crisply with the belt loop, with the zipper, you know, all these things. And even, you know, for example, you think about uniforms, you know, uniforms when you go to work, whether you're in the military or your uniform when you go into your day-to-day job, if people are going back, I am every day, but you don't always want to wear the elastic pant. And people are starting to come back now, hopefully. And I don't want to get too into COVID, but you know, hopefully people are coming back and dressing more for themselves and not necessarily for everyone else. So, yeah. Oh, that's a good one. Anthony, that's a good question. So the question is, can I speak a little more about my apprenticeship and how it helped me move forward with my skills? You know, the best advice that I was ever given when I got into the tailor shop, I really thought I was it when I did my fashion design. One of my former colleagues, she should be on here, we went to the Academy of Art in San Francisco together and we were studying fashion design. And I remember working for one particular brand and I would just not harass, but I would always ask the seamstress, how do you do this? How do you do that? And one of them suggested that I just get into tailoring. And so I was like, really, you know, like, why would I want to do something like that? I want to design, you know, I want to be a designer. And so I ended up interviewing and going to a department store and starting as a clerk for the tailoring department. So my first piece of advice, especially when apprenticing, is forget everything you learned. You're going to learn everything here, and it's going to be hands-on, and it's really going to be zipping up and watching. You can ask questions for sure, but there's so much talent and knowledge in the workroom. And I was blessed to start with men's tailoring because it's just very basic. It's all traditionally the same silhouettes. So what that looked like, and truly to be a master, it takes, I think, 10,000 hours to be a master in something. But I would just pick apart seams for the guys. I would organize threads. I would shadow them on their fittings. And then once they felt more confident in me, then they would allow me to start cutting the fabric for them, threading their machines, marking the buttonholes so that they can just start sewing. So I went from just opening things up, and that's how you learn, by opening things. So you open it up, you make notes, like how much was turned under, how far apart was the top stitch from the seam. And then eventually I started marking and cutting for the tailors. and they would trust me. So, you know, apprenticeship, I think, is a humbling experience. And it's something that, you know, it really shows your passion and your thirst for knowledge, because you're going to get your knowledge through different channels and different people, not necessarily by the book. And that's where there's nothing wrong with fashion design, but it didn't teach me the true handling of clothes until I started looking at it on someone's body and then taking it back in the room and opening up and thinking, how are we going to make this fit on the body? So after apprenticing for the men's, I ended up being promoted to manager and managing men's and women's. And so at that point, I had the basic knowledge of shortening from the shoulder, shortening sleeve, and now I was moving into gowns. And, you know, gowns is a whole nother, you know, world for me, because, you know, women are definitely more shapely than men are. And then also you have the beads and the sequin and the silk and, you know, all these delicate fabrics. So it went from one extreme where I can just chalk, cut, and blindly, you know, cut 4 or 5 pairs of pants in one shot, to let me sit here and baste and, you know, mark where this hem will be finished. And her hip is a little higher on the left than the right, so the hem would need to be a little bit longer on this side versus the other side. So to me, apprenticeship never really stops, I guess, because I'm always going to learn from people in the room and from the clients, really. So yeah, that's a little bit about my apprenticeship experience. I hope that answered some questions. See if anyone has anything else. Okay. Erica. Erica?
Hi, yes.
Hi.
Okay. Hi. In regards to pants,
Yeah.
what would you say from what you've seen with a woman with a fuller, I guess would say pelvic area, what sort of rise would you suggest? Like you said, for those days where you may be, you know, more full, or yeah.
So let's be clear about the pelvic area too, right? I'm going to turn this down just a little bit. Okay. So this is my waist, right? Can you see this, Erica?
Yes.
And this is the hip. And the pelvic area is going to fall a little bit below the seat, right?
Right.
So
right.
like you said, that's a complicated area. And I would do a mid-rise. You know, definitely start with the mid-rise, because if, let's say she needed it to be lower, then I would pin. And let's say she has a little bit of a shorter rise, then I would just pin where I can take it from. Now, sometimes you could say just let's start with a high rise, but then that changes the whole pattern a little bit. So mid-rise is truly in the middle. And again, you can look at the body and say, oh, well, maybe I need to raise the waist in the back, or maybe I need to raise the waist in the front, depending, again, you know, where her tilt is and how, you know, how her fullness is there. So mid-rise, and again, what you can do is measure yourself. Let me see if I can do this here. And everyone should, I mean, not everyone should know, but I'll just show you briefly how to measure the rise. You start from the belly button. Belly button. And I'm sorry about the sun here. And reach through the back and then to the top of the waist. So that rise on this mannequin is 37.5. And my suggestion would be to measure it a couple of times and, you know, see, you know, how that feels. Because the rise, again, is the comfort there. Oh, thanks. I gained pandemic weight. Girl, haven't we all? And let me see, I think Nicole had a question. Let's see here. I'm about to donate. Oh no, yes, there is hope. You know, there is hope for your pants. It's just, again, flipping it inside out and seeing where do you need that. If you need it in the hips, check the seam allowance and check the seat and see what you can do. And do not be afraid to open it up and baste loosely, maybe like a half-inch base, and then try it on and just see where you need it. Because again, I have a lot of clothes, and I joke the cobbler has no shoes. And some of my personal friends, like I have their stuff, and I just never make time truly for myself to do all of that and repair all of my stuff. But I think if you have the patience and time, Nicole, just take a look at what you have. You don't necessarily have to go out and spend unless there's something that you really, really like and you've been looking at it and it's on sale. That's what I would suggest. But skirts could be fairly easy though. And I know this is about pants, but with skirts, you can add panels. So if you need a little more space in the side seam, find a similar fabric or a fun fabric and, add it to the side seam and just make it look intentional. That's the whole point of it. Just make it look intentional. Hope that helps, Nicole. Yeah, it's not a bad idea to do it. And panels you can add in so many different areas. They become, you can call it a gusset if you add it under the arm. Sometimes ladies are fuller in the bust like myself, so they just need a few more inches there. So it's kind of like the taper concept, right? You start from 0 and then you open up where you need it. And then you kind of continue into the arm so that way it matches up. So I've done that for a couple of clients who are tiny waist, but very broad in terms of the bust and the shoulders. Yep, it looks like a V. Exactly. That's what a gusset is. So all in all, again, I'll just hit the points again. Start from the top, right? Start from your waist, then go to your hips. Don't be afraid of the number. Just really look at, how things are fitting and where they're pulling. And then think about the comfort in the pelvic area, because again, these are stressful areas. For men, here's a point. Some men require a gusset in the crotch area because they might have thicker thighs, especially men who are bodybuilders. For some reason, they want the skinniest pants, right? So you would have these guys who have all these muscles and want it to be so tight down to their ankle that I would have to add a gusset in between their thighs, just so they won't rip their pants, and also just the added stretch, because people do, people do walk and their thighs do rub. So that is a suggestion for like men's pants if they need a little bit more room to give a gusset in the crotch area. Yeah, so I am pretty much, open for further questioning, but hemming and pants, it's all about your style. And it's getting cold outside, so, don't be afraid to, actually, I have a good example of where I added a panel on a pant. It's for my mother's pant. But so this pant, I actually added a tuxedo stripe. I don't know if you can see it because it was a little tight for her. Now she got all skinny on me. I think you guys can see I did a tuxedo stripe there, and I did it all the way through the hem. And now we need to revert it back, but she loves the tuxedo stripe. So in my mind, I have to figure out, how much she really needs, and then accounting for that added tuxedo stripe for the finish. Oh, do I ever have opportunities for part-time work and helpers? Yes, I do. I really do. And the thing about Atelier Damio is, similar to Custom Collaborative, it's a learning space. For me, I would share everything that I know in terms of tricks, because it takes time and it takes a lot of energy when you're involved in alterations, right? Because you're just taking something apart, and it's so frustrating just taking it apart that you put it back together. Sometimes you're all jumbled. So for me, like how I like to work is, piece by piece, and taking my time so that I can really learn, the different patterns for the different designers and why they finish something a certain way, why they have a crotch guard here, why they have a heel guard there. So definitely, Anthony and Doris and Gozi, like just whenever possible, I would love to offer some part-time help in my atelier. You know, I work with a few designers and some, you know, stylists and their clients. So, you know, it's always an opportunity for something very different and fun and last minute. Everybody wants something the next day. Remember, in fashion, everything's an emergency. Even though it's just threads, it's always an emergency in fashion. So thank you for dropping that for everyone, Anthony, in there. And do not hesitate to reach out to me, even just say hello, or, you know, what you would like to see more of. And I wish you all the best. And I'm glad that, you know, I got this opportunity again to speak to all you makers, and hopefully this really helps. And I'll hope to see you in your stylish pants for the fall and winter season. Thank you so much.
Lauren, you're amazing and so talented, and it's inspiring, and you make it look really easy, and you're a great teacher. So we're so glad that you joined us today. We would love to do an in-person workshop with you when COVID safety, you know, permits. So we would love to do that with you and keep chatting. And thank you for sharing opportunities for our makers.
Awesome. Anything else? But I mean, we do have a few minutes, but just throw it out there. I know people might be shy, but again, email me or drop it in the chat, and don't be afraid. I mean, you can do it. It just takes a little patience, but you know, pants, once you have them, you'll live in them, literally. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Sherry. I'm looking at everyone. Kawan, I wish you all the best, you guys. Wish you all the best. So, I mean, again, what Custom Collaborative is doing is amazing. I'm sorry, was someone talking? I guess that's feedback. All right. Anything else, Anthony or Doris?
I mean, we could talk forever, but we could keep talking forever, but yeah, just thank you. And we look forward to seeing more of your great work. I'm following you on Instagram. I encourage everyone else to follow your work there as well. And just wishing you a great rest of the month and a good holiday.
All right, everyone, be safe. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.